This is the Global Intelligence Report for the 30th of September, 2024. Hope you guys like the new format, so something a little interesting for you. All right, well, let's hop to it. So, you have probably heard a lot about what's going on in the Middle East right now. There's a lot of escalation in the last 24, 48 hours. And of course, as always, we have the backstory for you. So, on Sunday night, in a not so super secret meeting, Alexander Soros, the son of George Soros, promised the deep state generals in Iraq, Syria, Turkey, Lebanon, Israel, and of course the Americans an upfront sum of $54 billion to achieve the Greater Israel Agenda. In case you are not aware, the Greater Israel Agenda is where the state of Israel becomes basically the entire Middle East. Of course, all the people that live there now would not be able to live there anymore. They would be relocated to southern Russia and other areas that have agreed to take on Middle Eastern persons. That is, if any of them survive. So the survivors would actually go to another location. However, Mr. Alexander Soros then proceeded to show us his proof of funds. His proof of funds was not actually real money. They were actually bonds, historical bonds or hysterical bonds as we call them here. Do they have actual real value? The answer to the question is no. Did they ever have real value? The answer to the question is yes. But this was probably at least 7 to 10 decades ago. This is not something new. So we've talked about this before. There's a lot of talk about them being part of the financial reset, allegedly, around the world. So where did these bonds come from, and why was 54 billion enough to start an escalation with zero actual money paid out? Well, I'll tell you. Jamie Dimon decided to take a trip to the Philippines recently, where he met with alleged Philippine elders. And apparently they had promised him upon his arrival that he would receive lots of gold. And of course, they would want payment for this gold. And as we had talked about last week, there was a lot of big numbers and zero actual cash to be delivered. So they did manage to get around $1.9 trillion in historical bonds. Those bonds were then promptly taken by private jet, along with Mr. Dimon, over to China, in which they tried to add those bonds to the bank's balance sheet. Alexander Soros just happened to be a new face in the game. And of course, the Soros name, carries a lot of weight as it relates to being able to pay for terrorist attacks and rebels around the world. As you know, George Soros has been paying for those types of things for years throughout the African continent, throughout Latin America, and of course now throughout the Middle East. So this is not new. So when he jumped in and started playing the game along with JP Morgan Chase, now the funds, even though they were the same things that they've been seeing for years, appeared absolutely real. So once again, now everybody jumps to the party. So a lot of events have taken place over the last few days, basically 24, 48 hours, related to this little tiny $54 billion with a promise of at least $1.9 trillion to come. So let's talk a little bit about these events. Let's talk about the Middle East to start out with. Everybody started bombing everybody. It appeared that it started with Israel. They bombed Syria. They bombed Lebanon. There's no even conflict between Syria and Israel right now. They bombed Iraq. There are so many different countries involved right now with what's happening there. So at least you have kind of the background story of why everybody started jumping to start the war pretty quickly here in the Middle East. Okay, so let's talk about the events that have taken place over the last 48 hours based on our intelligence information. All right, we had airstrikes on the Hudaydah port. We had helicopters down carrying Iranian guards, officers, and military experts who were not even involved in the original skirmish. Syria, airstrike targeted Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, and Maher al-Assad, head of the 4th Division of the Syrian Republic Guards. The Free Syrian Army announced that Hezbollah and the pro-Iranian militias in Syria are crumbling, and it's time to drive them out of Syria. An Iraqi general from the old Iraqi army, and I mean old, back into Saddam's era, announced that he will move to Syria to start the liberation process of Iraq from Iranian militias. He announced that he will be recruiting soldiers and that he will announce the when and where very soon, apparently on social media. An Iraqi parliament member has announced that there is over 4,000 metric tons of some kind of explosive materials in the port of Basra that needs to be moved immediately as if it was to be targeted, in a similar manner to what happened in Beirut in the port bombing there. It would allegedly destroy the oil exporting infrastructure, the import of goods, and destroy the port, cripple the economy, and put 2 million Iraqis in harm's way. The Iraqi security forces came out and denied these allegations. Next, some of the pro-Iranian militants are continuing to bomb Israel from Iraq with drones. A large explosion was also heard in Baghdad just minutes ago when I had typed this in, so this was probably about 4 hours ago. And drones were spotted in the area. Now in Lebanon, the Israeli Air Force targeting daily for the last, 2 days, I guess, first-tier high-ranking officers. 1,700 Lebanese died so far in the recent campaign, plus more wounded. At least 500,000 people migrated from southern Lebanon to other areas in Lebanon, and 250,000 people moved into Syria. Hezbollah and Israel are continuously bombing each other throughout the day for the past couple of days. The UN peacekeeping forces, UNIFIL, and the Lebanese army withdrew their forces from the borders with Israel by at least 5 kilometers. Over 100 Israeli tanks plus special forces are now on the borders with Lebanon, and the area is currently being scouted by jets, helicopters, and drones at the moment a couple of hours ago, with continuing artillery shelling. Hopefully, we will start to see an abrupt de-escalation within the coming hours once everybody realizes this was another fake currency scheme put forth by yet another deep state stooge. Okay, next we have some deep state generals underneath the Denver airport today. Seems like everybody rallied in accordance with the fake funds. God bless these people. Okay, so these several American generals that were found deep underneath the Denver airport, by the way. I have heard the rumors about the Denver airport on the internet, and at one point in time, there was a lot of space junk there and a lot of equipment. However, that hasn't been the case for well over a year now. We haven't found anything. We even went back and looked again today. We didn't see anything new created there. So that they could actually use to do what it is they wanted to do. So alerts started coming in probably around 1 o'clock or so my time today regarding these generals. We started listening into their meetings, and for their part of the $54 billion, let's talk about what they plan to do. Oh, you gotta love the scams and the new faces with fake money, right? Okay, they felt that this was the safest place to be. The only reason why I could think that this would be the safest quote-unquote place to be is, number one, it's super secret and secure, and number two, there were no plans for them to, I use the term bomb lightly, to blow up utilizing a backdoor system that they thought that they still had access to that would simultaneously blow up around 274 nuclear power plants worldwide. The plants that were targeted in the U.S. were many, the entire East Coast, along with San Francisco. They also talked about, just for, I don't know, how do you say it? For show. They also talked about blowing up the Burge Tower in Dubai. If you've never seen it, it is one of the largest towers in the world, if not the largest, or tallest, I should say. And they said that it would be their Twin Towers moment. You know, too bad we don't still have the Twin Towers, they laughed. And then they proceeded to talk about, well, we still have the Burge, we could blow that up. And they all started laughing. Like, this is hysterical, right? So according to our sources, they basically said that the secret space program was going to have some old system up and running for them within the next 24 to 48 hours. I still have not yet figured out the big scam here. What I mean by big scam is everybody everywhere, the Q movement, everybody is talking about this October 1st and the US is going to be free and it has to be martial law and all of these types of things. But yet there's nothing, no alignments, nothing happening. So this just must be a hope and a wish. And, you know, this type of thing has stalled out many different times. You know, and I have to say, it's always stalled out mainly because of lack of funding. That is the majority of the reason, or we have interfered with what it is that they're doing so that it couldn't happen, just like we did today. Did we have space junk, as I call it, underneath the several nuclear power plants in the world? Yes. The space junk that was there, though, was 600,000 years old. Long before we ever had nuclear power, we had other types of power sources back then. And that wasn't the reason why they were put in those locations. This was something that was due to the Abraxas. They somehow thought that they could get access to this Abraxas system, being the bloodline of the Abraxas, I guess, or Cain, and that this was going to help them access it. But again, no, that's not happening. There is no more junk under these facilities. So I highly doubt they're going to be able to detonate any nuclear power plants anywhere in the world. There were talks of several plants in Latin America as well as the Europe, and definitely US, Canada, Alberta was mentioned. They talked about Las Vegas area, I should say, because the plant's not actually in Las Vegas. They were talking about several places, even close to Langley, Virginia, which is kind of a surprise, but okay. Just so you know, these generals wanted to blow you up too, CIA. You know, isn't that funny? Well, we were assured by our ground command, you know, by code name Enforcer, that there is no one currently left under the Denver airport, and there is no equipment left which could do any harm. So there was the end of that fiasco. We will definitely be keeping watch all night just to see if there's anything else that they want to do. So speaking of ports, we talked a little bit ago about the ports in Iraq and in the Middle East that they were planning on blowing up so that they could halt all oil imports and exports throughout the Middle East. That would definitely affect their economies, crash the economies, and all this kind of stuff. Well, surprise, surprise, everyone. Port workers were due to go on strike at midnight tonight here in the United States, too. Would have affected about 45,000 workers, and they were represented for this strike by the International Longshoremen's Association and the U.S. Maritime Alliance. Apparently, they're the ones that are doing the most of the threatening. This would have affected ports pretty much all over the East Coast and the Gulf Coast. It looks like a lot of people would have been out of work for a short period of time, but this would have definitely caused an issue with U.S. imports and imports and exports. Been a long day. Definitely for the U.S. Would have caused those shortages again. I hope everybody's got their toilet paper. Just kidding. But definitely would have caused an import-export problem here in the U.S., which would have furthered the need for us to get all of our supplies probably from the military. And God knows what they would put in there. those of you that don't know, most all active service members in the United States and several other countries in the world are given, let's just say, some interesting things throughout any kind of a mess hall where they would eat. That's typically your lower ranking soldiers and officers. And hopefully that wouldn't have been the case here in the US. But miraculously, within 1 hour of the Soros cash disappearing, they have all suddenly struck a deal. Wow, what a coincidence! Proving the port strikes was all a part of the plan to implement global martial law and put the military in charge again. Yawn. So it stalled out several times before. This is not the first time, due to a lack of funding mainly. But with the fake cash promised from Soros, everyone jumped into action, including the United States generals who intended on causing a nuclear holocaust, actually in the United States. Okay, now everybody's asking me about Hurricane Helen. What is this all about? Well, unfortunately, the situation ended up with over 2 million people without any power, and even in those areas with very little wind and not enough rain to cause any outages. So this is very interesting. Everybody's been asking me if this is natural. Well, the answer is yes and no. Was it affected by any humans or the deep state or HARP or any of these people? The answer to the question is no. Any intervention in order to create this hurricane in the first place actually came from Omega AI itself and some standing orders that occur every time, every year around this time, I should say. So partially real, partially not real. Now, the amplification of the power outages was not necessarily caused by the Omega AI, and it definitely wasn't actually caused by the storm. Yes, some trees fell over. Unnaturally so, these trees fell over. Meaning there wasn't enough wind, there wasn't enough rain to uproot, you know, a 50 to 100-year-old tree. It's just not possible. But anyway, nonetheless, this happened in many areas. This left people out of power all the way north to Tennessee, down through Georgia, the Carolinas, and obviously Florida. As I understand it, most, not all, of the power has been restored now, and the transformers just happened to shut themselves off. And wouldn't it be interesting to know that we do have on file, and I have shown it in the past during other reports, where the governor of Tennessee is actually one of the first governors to have signed up for FEMA camps in his area. So all a part of the same thing? Why, yes, I think it is. So I guess as of right now, there are no other significant events that really occurred over this weekend. Nothing extremely positive. A lot more cleanup still going on our part as it relates to things that have nothing to do with the deep state or humans. We are watching everything closely. I'm surprised at the reaction that happened so quickly. Maybe it's because this was all part of a plan that came from a long time ago in order to shift power from the US over to China. Although I will tell you, if this order did come from the Chinese deep state, I will tell you that these American generals did target at least 2 or 3 major nuclear power plants within your country too. So, very interesting. We have no idea who's running what show these days, but good old Soros, you know, who originally was born Jewish, now, then he was taken in by the Nazis during World War II, and now his son apparently has also become a Nazi too. Very interesting. Well, tomorrow is the big day for the deep state, and they promise to implement martial law, but it looks like it's going to be another, well, deep fake. So Thank you for watching today's Global Intelligence Agency report for the 30th of September, 2024. I look forward to seeing all of you on Wednesday for more updates on what's really going on in the world.